His name was Walter. While he was still very young, his parents moved from Chicago to a farm in Missouri. And it was there that he had his first encounter with death. He went out exploring out back by a grove of willow trees, and there, about 30 feet ahead of him, he saw an owl. This owl was perched in the branch of an apple tree and apparently sound asleep. The boy studied him for a while and then decided that that owl would make an ideal pet. So he walked forward, closer and closer, until finally he was able to reach out and grab the bird by its legs. Walter had captured it. But even amidst the flurry of beating wings and wild cries, the boy held on. Until maybe as a result of his being gouged by the owl's talons, he flung it to the ground and stomped it to death. When the battle was over, Walter looked down at the blood and the heap of feathers, and then he cried. When later he buried the owl, it was his tears that moistened the earth. And for months thereafter, that bird appeared in Walter's dreams. Ashamed, he never told a soul about that incident until years later. But that experience of destruction and death had an unusual impact on Walter. It gave him a fresh awareness of the sacredness of life. And he vowed never again to kill a living creature. And not only that, but through his creativity, he continually brought a whole world of animals to life. As it happened, he thereafter tried to keep the animals of the forest, allowing them to run free by drawing them. Now the boy is no longer, nor the grown man, but his creatures live on in the incomparable and undying art of Walt Disney. Reverence for life. All of us have it, but to varying degrees. And as we know, that awareness comes in different stages in our lives, and it takes different forms of expression. But no one has ever exemplified it more fully than Jesus Christ. He was the one who set the bar when he said, "No one has greater love than this, than to lay down one's life for one's friends." Eastertide is the time when, by God's grace, we are reminded of the greatest reality of our lives, which is God's redeeming love and the realization of how he made us to connect with each other, to connect with him in love. Today we honor the donor process, whereby people can and do give of themselves, parts of their own bodies, so that others may live. The need is great. Today, 22 people will die because they did not get what they needed in time. Approximately 22,000 people are awaiting a transplant, and at present, only 51% of the population is registered as donors. But thankfully for all of us, Bob McLaughlin and Priscilla Campbell-Wyman have been in that number, and they are here this morning to tell you their story. And first, Bob McLaughlin, and his piece will be read by Julie Chase.
The process and why I became a donor was made abundantly clear that I was called by God. I spent 3 weeks thinking and praying about it. Then it came to me, yes, I should do this, and I knew it would work. I called Phil Cavato, a good friend in Pittsburgh, and asked, "How do I become a donor?" His response was, "Who are you donating to?" I said, "I am donating to you." He responded by saying that many people had tried to donate, including family members, but no one was a match. I told him that it would work. God has directed me to do this for you. Phil explained the rigorous tests, blood work, and stress tests that had to be done. For 5 months, Phil and I would chat after each test, and he would say, "It's not going to work." I said, "Just trust me." And after the last test, I called him and told him I was a match. I never once questioned my decision and gave no thought to the consequences. There were no surprises and no what-ifs. My job was done. God was in charge from here on out. The surprise that did happen was after I donated. There was a warmth and loving relationship between Phil and I that I had never felt with anyone before. In my mind, this must have been the feeling that a mother feels when giving birth to a child.
And now Priscilla Campbell-Wyman.
Good morning. My story is the least best kept secret at Church on the Cape. Because when the process started, fall of 2013, Reverend Ruth announced from the pulpit that somebody in our church needed a kidney and told the blood type. And I kind of feel like the message was God's message through her voice right to me. So the process started, and as Bob said, it takes a long time. In my case, it took probably about 8 or 9 months before we knew that the chances were pretty good. But I also have said it's totally divine intervention, because if you don't hear it from your church, in your church, how else can you interpret it? The reason I decided to be as anonymous as possible is the fear that somewhere along the way, as Bob felt, or as Bob's recipient felt, something would happen that I would not be a match. But fortunately, after I lost count how many blood tests and collections of urine, et cetera, so far everything was good. Then October of 2014, Carrie, Ross were able to join me for an all-day marathon of appointments at the Maine Transplant Center in Portland. And they were able to be part of it, but when it was the psych exam, I had to be alone. They actually do question if you're doing this for financial gain, believe it or not. It really is not supposed to happen, but I guess in foreign countries particularly it is happening. So I kept passing all the tests, and in December we got a date for January that it looked like it was a go. So on January 20th, 2015, Carrie and I arrived at the hospital with our spouses about 5:30. Pastor Ruth was already there, of course. She got to come in, we were all prepped for surgery, and they put our two stretchers together, and Pastor Ruth was able to do a prayer over us, so we knew everything was going to be fine. I guess I also have never had children, but I kind of feel like I have a twin sister. We do share something, we're joined by the kidneys. When Ruth asked me to come in to kind of go over today's, I can't really call it a sermon because I'm not giving a sermon. We got interrupted with a phone call. She had just read something to me, a poem or something she'd come across, and she said, but it's really more for a non-living donor. So while she was on the phone, I thought, I wonder if that's the same thing that I have next to my license, which you can see is pretty tattered. And when she got off the phone, I held it up and I said, look what I've been carrying around for a long time, which is called Don't Give Up. And she asked me to read it to her, which I did, and she said, you have to do that on Sunday. And the really interesting thing is, in my handwriting, I put, please donate. Sign my name, and it's dated January 2000. So, 15 years later, I did. I hope I can get through this. So I'm going to end with Don't Give Up, which was written by Becky Hansen. If you can swallow hard enough to push away the fear and say yes to the question that no one wants to hear, then you will add a ray of hope when there's nothing left but crying, and become the gentle link between the living and the dying. I believe that you'll find comfort, though your heart has been laid raw, in offering hope to someone else who prays and wants in awe. Until it's done, you can't know how or whom your words will bless, but hundreds more will find new life if you will answer yes. Thank you.